Nstp 1 Lesson on Drug Prevention and Control Education Part 1. Our learning objectives for these lessons are the following. At the end of the discussion, the students will be able to familiarize themselves with the legal basis of drug prevention education in the country and to appreciate the provisions stipulated on the Comprehensive Dangerous Drug Law 2002. Since we are studying drug prevention and control education, it is expedient or important to recapitulate what drug is. A drug is any substance, with the exception of food and water, which when taken into the body alters the body's function either physically or psychologically. Drugs may be legal, for example, alcohol, caffeine, tobacco, or illegal ones like the cannabis, the ecstasy, cocaine, and the heroin. We will further study all of these substances later on our study regarding drug abuse. Since our government is very keen in educating the Filipino people regarding the danger of drug abuse, the following agencies are amongst us for control, regulation, and support of these drugs. For example, is the PDEA, the Drug Advisory Program, or DAP. We have ICAD under the Office of the President, and also the Dangerous Drug Board, which is under the Office of the President also. We have FDA, or the Food and Drug Administration of the Philippines, which is responsible in regulating and in the manufacturing and distributions of these drugs. Then we have community-based treatment rehabilitation resources. And finally, we have Philippine Drug Enforcement Agency, or the Operation Private Eye, under also the Office of the President, and the Philippine Drug Enforcement Agency, or PDEA. All of these agencies are working hand in hand for the control, regulation, and support of these drugs that could be abused. We will now discuss the legal basis of the control and prevention law against the proliferation of drug abuse in the country, particularly the Comprehensive Dangerous Drug Act of 2002, otherwise known as the Republic Act 9165. Under the Act, it is the policy of the state to safeguard the integrity of its territory and the well-being of its citizenry, particularly the youth, from the harmful effect of dangerous drugs on their physical and mental well-being. To continue, and to defend the same against acts or omissions detrimental to their development and preservation. In view of the foregoing, the state needs to enhance further the efficacy of the law against the dangerous drugs, being one of today's more serious social ills. Okay, bearing with me, Comprehensive Dangerous Drugs Act of 2002, or otherwise known as Republic Act 9165, has some provisions on the penalties of a drug offender. The following from Section 4, discussing the importation of dangerous drugs or controlled precursors and essential chemicals. And by the way, ano ba yung controlled precursors na tinatawag? Yung controlled precursors na tinatawag ay mga chemicals kung saan diniderive o kine-chemical process para makakuha ng mga shabu or other derivatives. Yung essential chemicals naman, hindi ka naman makapag-produce ng mga derivatives na ito unless you use some other kinds of chemicals. So, lahat ng ito ay kasama dito sa tinatawag na provisions. Ano yung magiging penalty pag nahuli ka na mayroon kang dinadala o ini-import na mga substances na ito? Okay, number 1, makita natin kung importer ka, ang penalty nito ay life to death sentence plus 500,000 to 10 million pesos na penalty. Ngayon, kung importer ka pa, tapos gumagamit ka pa ng mga diplomatic way or passport para hindi mabusisi yung mga dala-dala nyo, okay, ang mangyayari ay ikaw ay magkakaroon ng death penalty pa rin plus 10 million. So mapansin mo, wala na yung life sentence, yung possibility ng life sentence, wala na. Death penalty agad. Tapos number 3, kung ikaw ay financier nito, organizer ka or manager nung pag-i-import na ito, death penalty, the same thing, plus 10 million pesos penalty. So makita ho natin yan, ano? And then kung protector at cuddler ka, nagtatago ka o tinatago mo, pinoproteksyonan mo itong mga people behind the importation of these dangerous drugs, ang penalty mo ay 12 years and 1 day to 20 years na makukulong ka plus 100,000 pesos to 500,000 pesos penalty. Now continue on with the same Comprehensive Dangerous Drugs Act of 2002, Republic Act 9165. Okay, let's go on to section 5. How about the sale, trading, administration, dispensation, delivery, distribution, and transportation of dangerous drugs or controlled precursors and essential chemicals? Paano kung nagtitinda ka, nagtitrade ka, ikaw ang nangangalaga, ikaw ang nagdi-dispense, nagdi-deliver, nagdi-distribute, etc., etc., no? Ano yung penalty? So, under this, yung mga pagkilos na ito, halimbawa, sale, trade, distribute, delivering, transporting, ikaw pa yung broker nito, the penalty is life to death sentence. Pagkatapos, may penalty ka na 500,000 to 10 million pesos. So in that case, ang laki, ano? Ang laki talagang itong Comprehensive Dangerous Drugs Act na ito ay nais pigilan yung proliferation ng drug abuse sa ating bansa. Now, let's talk about the elements. Paano na-establish na siya ay sabihin natin, nagbebenta ng kanyang ng mga droga? Kinakailangan muna ma-identify, ano? Or ma-identify yung identity nung bumibili, ng buyer, and then the seller, tapos nakita talaga yung actual na halimbawa object or yung mga paraphernalias and the drugs itself and iba pang mga consideration. Then the delivery of the thing sold and the payment thereof. Kailangan ma-establish na talaga nagkaroon ng bentahan at nagkaroon ng bayaran. So importante yon. Continuing on with Section 5 of the Comprehensive Dangerous Drug Act of 2002. The sale, trading, administration, and dispensation, delivery, distribution, and transportation of dangerous drugs or controlled precursors and essential chemicals. Ano yung penalty? Actually, nandito yung maximum penalty. Kailan nagkakaroon ng maximum penalty ang isang offender or drug offender? Halimbawa, siya ay nagbenta ng droga within 100 meters, no? Minimum 100 meters from a school institution, he will serve the maximum penalty, which is death penalty before the suspension ng death penalty during the time of President Macapagal Arroyo. Number 2, kapag ikaw ay gumagamit ng mga minors or mentally incapacitated persons bilang tulak, runners, couriers, and messengers or in any other capacity, maximum penalty rin ang iyong makakamit. Number 3, if the victim is a minor or mentally incapacitated, mas delikado ka kasi maximum penalty din ang i-impose sa iyo na parusa. Dangerous drug is the proximate cause of death of the victim. Halimbawa, namatay yung pinagbigyan mo ng droga. You will serve the maximum penalty also. And 5, organizer ka or manager ka ng unlawful act na pagtutulak ng droga, maximum penalty din. Now let's go on to section 6. Maintenance of a den, dive, or resort. Ano ba yung mga den na yan? Ano yung category ng mga den? A den, dive, or resort is a place where any dangerous drug and or controlled precursors and essential chemical or chemicals is administered or are administered, delivered, stored for illegal purposes, distributed, sold, or used in any form. So ito pong mga den na yan ay kung saan itinatago, iniimbak, ginagawang pot sessions, diyan sila nag-conduct ng transaction ng businesses nila, ang tawag dyan ay den. So, ano yung parusa doon sa mga nagme-maintain ng mga ganitong klaseng lugar? Continuing with section 6, maintenance of den, dive, or resort. Okay, if you are found to be somebody who is maintaining these places called a drug den, okay, ang hatol mo ay life to death sentence. Okay, may penalty ka pa na 500,000 to 10 million fine. And then you were also find out to be catering to minor clients. Nagbebenta ka sa mga menor de edad. Okay, walang life sentence na available sa penalty but death penalty agad plus 10 million fine. And then if you are a financier, okay, financier, o ikaw yung nag-finance ng mga gastusing ito, death plus 10 million fine. And then if you're a protector or coddler, nagtatago ka ng mga ganitong klaseng mga personality, you will be incarcerated for 12 years and 1 day up to 20 years plus 100,000 to 500,000 fine. Okay, kung namatay yung client mo, katulad ng binanggit natin kanina, meron tayong death penalty dyan, ano? According to the Comprehensive Dangerous Drug Acts. Kaya lang nga, nasuspend yung death penalty, but just the same, mayroon kang life sentence, 1 million to 15 million fine. Okay, ano mangyayari dun sa place na yon? The place shall be confiscated in favor of the government. Continuing on with the same Drugs Act of 2002 on Section 7 about the employees or visitors of that den or drug den that we've been discussing a while ago. Okay, if you are an employee, okay, if you're an employee of that den, dive or resort, who is aware of the nature of the place as such, alam mo na mayroong transaction doon ng pagbibentahan o paggamit ng droga. And then, ikaw rin yung tao na bagamat hindi ka kasali, you're not included in the actual trading of drugs, but aware of the nature of the place as such, and shall knowingly visit the same, okay, kahit hindi mo alam, meron kang tinatawag na penalty. You will be imprisoned, incarcerated. For how long? Ikaw ay ma-incarcerate ng 12 years and 1 day to 20 years plus a fine of 100,000 to 500,000 pesos. Malaki yan. Kaya siguro ginawa ito ng government natin those who contrived the Comprehensive Dangerous Drugs Act of 2002 to repel or to prevent yung proliferation at participation ng mga kababayan nating Pilipino, lalo kayong mga kabataan sa mga bagay regarding drug abuse. Now, continuing with the same Drugs Act of 2002 or Republic Act 9165, Section 11 discusses the possession of dangerous drugs topic. Any person who, unless authorized by the law, shall be called a possessor or shall possess any dangerous drug in the following quantities, regardless of the degree of purity. Anong ibig sabihin o regardless of the degree of purity? Whether it's 900%, 100% pure, yung substance na dala mo, nakadepende yon doon sa dami o gramo para ikaw ay parusahan in a different degree also. So titignan natin yan sa susunod na slide natin. But anyway, kung nakitaan ka, napatunayan that you are a possessor of drug or dangerous drugs, ang penalty mo is life imprisonment to death. Meron ka ring fine na 500,000 to 10 million thousand pesos. That's a lot of money. Continuing with Comprehensive Dangerous Drugs Act of 2002 on Section 11, continuously discussing the possession of dangerous drugs, makikita natin yung elements. Elements are important so that the authorities could establish if the person is indeed in possession of dangerous drugs. The person, number one, is in possession which is identified to be a prohibited drug. Dapat yung dala niya, prohibited drug. Such possession is not authorized by the law. At yung dala niyang prohibited drug, talagang hindi pinapayagan ng batas na dali niya on his own capacity. That person freely and consciously possessed the said prohibited drug. Ibig sabihin, nobody coerced him, nobody planted on him yung mga bagay na yun sa kanyang katawan, and then conscious siya na alam niya, deliberately alam niya na ito ay dadalhin niya at ito ay droga. Okay, continuing on the Section 11, possession of dangerous drugs. Okay, so what are the amount? Kailangan kasi meron tinatawag na parameter, how much, no? How much or how heavy yung iyong dalang droga. Sabi dong kanina, it's not necessarily pag-usapan yung purity yung droga, but yung dami. Okay? It's the mass, how heavy it is. So in our Section 11, Possession of Dangerous Drugs Act penalty, ikaw ay may dala. You will be penalized in accordance with the provisions of the Comprehensive Dangerous Drugs Act of 2002. Pag ikaw ay number 1, may 10 gramo ng opium. Okay? Meron kang 10 gramong dala or in your possession of more of the morphine. Okay, mamahaling droga to 10 grams or more of heroin, and then you have in your possession 10 grams or more of cocaine or cocaine hydrochloride, that is the scientific name of cocaine. 5, in your possession meron kang 50 grams or more or methamphetamine hydrochloride or shabu. Methamphetamine hydrochloride, yun yung tawag, hydrochloride or shabu. Okay, and then 10 grams or more of marijuana resin or oil, and then number 7, 500 grams or more of marijuana, and finally meron kang dalang 10 grams or more of other dangerous drugs such as, but not limited to, methylene dioxymethamphetamine or MDMA, or in other words, yung popular na naririnig natin, yung ecstasy. Okay? And then we have paramethoxyamphetamine or PMA. That's a long word. Okay? Another scientific name for TMA, trimethoxyamphetamine. And then the more enduring, matagal na to, 1960s pa, sikat na ito, the lysergic acid diethylamine or LSD. And then we have gamma hydroxyamphetamine or GHB. And those similarly designed or newly introduced drugs and their derivatives without having any therapeutic value, or if the quantity possessed is far beyond therapeutic requirements as determined and promulgated by the board in accordance to Section 93, Article 11 of this Act. Okay, we will not go through that, yung mga penalty pang iba. But ito yung mga amount, how much, how heavy yung pwede mong ikapahamak pag nahuli ka. You know how heavy is 10 grams? That is too light, Napakagaan niya, konti lang yan. And yet, that will cost your future and even your sinasabi natin, your life. Going on the same Comprehensive Dangerous Drugs Act of 2002, Section 12, possession of equipments, instruments, apparatus, and other paraphernalia for dangerous drugs. Okay, so any person who, unless authorized by the law, shall possess or have under his or her control any equipment, any instrument, apparatus, and other paraphernalia fit or intended for smoking, consuming, administering, injecting, ingesting, or introducing any dangerous drug into the body, meron kang penalty of imprisonment pag nahulihan ka possessing, not in actual using or ingesting or injecting, but you in your possession, you have these things or paraphernalia fit or intended for dangerous drug use for the body. So imprisonment ang mapapala mo dyan. So gaano katagal ang kulong mo? 6 months and 1 day to 4 years. Mahaba yun. And then a fine of 10,000 to 50,000 pesos. Hindi ka nahuli na nag-actual na nagdodroga. Subalit nahulihan ka ng mga paraphernalia na ito and equipments. So, yun ang magiging penalty mo. Now, let's talk about the paraphernalia. Makita nyo dyan sa ating screen, yung tinatawag na glow sticks. Na itong glow sticks na ito, kapag na-high na yung yung user ng drugs, okay? Inawas-iwas niya itong colorful things na ito, tinatawag na glow stick, para ma-enhance yung senses niya, lalong gumanda, according to them, yung kanilang pakiramdam. Okay? Another one is the aerosol containing hardened paints or glue to be inhaled. Familiar tayo dyan. Hindi na kailangan yung aerosol dito sa Pilipinas. Ilalagay sa isang canister and then meron dong thinner or yung tinatawag na mga glue, tsaka nila nilalanghap, at ini-ingest nila yung amoy. Very toxic, very bad for the health, very bad for your respiratory system, very bad for your sabihin natin mga linings ng mga throat, ng nose, lahat very dangerous, and it would cause severe sickness later on the prolonged user. Another one is yung nakita nyo may spoon, then there is that white thing, tinutunaw yan, then dissolve. Kung di ako nagkakamali, cocaine yan or heroin. Pag natunaw na yan, okay, gagamit ng syringe, pagkatapos i-inject na sa katawan ng user. So you use that spoon, yes, at dinidissolve yung cocaine. Another one is the bong. Nakita nyo yan, Ito yung doon inilalagay yung mga leaves of marijuana leaves, and then doon nila ito sisindihan na parang tabako, but the thing is they will inhale yung tinatawag na smoke coming from the burning leaves of the marijuana. Okay, and this is one shabu sniffing paraphernalias. Okay, nakikita natin minsan yan sa TV. Ano? And then another one which is also very familiar sight sa mga television, yung short plastic straws, yung ni-roll up na paper tube, tapos sisinghutin, ano? They will snort the powdered form of drugs such as the cocaine or the heroin. Direkta na to sa utak ng tao, and it will cause, yan yung cause ng mga brain damages, pagkatapos physical handicaps, which is irreversible later on sa buhay nila. Wow. Okay, continuing on with the use of dangerous drugs. Now, let's talk about the penalty. A person apprehended or arrested who is found to be positive for use of any dangerous drug or drugs. So, ang tawag natin dito sa Tagalog is user, ano? Pero English yung user. After a confirmatory test, and shall be imposed a penalty of a minimum of 6 months rehabilitation. Ayon dun sa Comprehensive Dangerous Drugs Act of 2002. Marirehab ka ng 6 months in a government rehabilitation center for the first offense. Now, how about kung nahuli ka the second time around? Okay? Continuing on with Section 15, use of dangerous drugs, ito ang penalty mo. If apprehended using any dangerous drug for the second time, he or she shall suffer the penalty of imprisonment. Okay, that is quite different from the first offense. You will be imprisoned or incarcerated for the next 6 years and 1 day up to 12 years, depende sa hatol sa iyo ng judge. And then you will be fined around 50 to 200,000 pesos. That's a lot. And many of our youths are in this predicament. Very sad for the parents and for the future of this young man and woman. Okay, continuing with Section 16 of the same Comprehensive Dangerous Drugs Act of 2002, Republic Act 9165, the cultivation or culture of plant classified as dangerous drugs or are sources thereof. Ibig sabihin, how about those people who are cultivating? How about those people who are planting? How about those people who are propagating these plants? Okay? Katulad ng opium poppy, and then particularly very popular yan sa Pilipinas yung marijuana leaves, di ba? O marijuana plants. Ano ang mangyayari sa kanila? Okay, sabi sa provision na ito, Section 16, any person who shall plant, cultivate, or culture marijuana, opium poppy, kasi po yung opium is a kind of herb din yan, ano? Or any other plants, regardless of quantity. Tanda natin, if you have a 1 hectare of marijuana plantation or a single pot in your home, pag nahuli ka, hindi tinitignan yung quantity. Nakatakot, ano? Which is or may hereafter be classified as a dangerous drug or as a source from which any dangerous drug may be manufactured or derived. Okay, continuing with Section 16. Okay, ano ang penalty? Any person who organizes, manages, or acts as a financier of any of the illegal activities prescribed in this section, ang sabi doon, the penalty would be death plus fine of 10 million. Of course, napalitan niya ng life sentence for a while kasi na-withhold o na hindi pa binabalik yung death penalty sa bansa natin. And any person who acts as a protector or cuddler, ikaw ay nagtatago at nag-iingat, nagpoprotekta sa mga violators na ito ng provisions under this section, anong mangyayari? Ang penalty mo, imprisonment of 12 years and 1 day, up to 20 years. Tapos may fine kan 100,000 to 500,000 pesos. Okay, continuing on to section 17. How about those persons or people who are maintaining and keeping the original records of transactions on dangerous drugs or controlled precursors and essential chemicals? Paano yung mga taong nagtatago ng mga records na ito, ng mga transactions na ito? What would happen to them? And then sa section 18, how about those people who are issuing the unnecessary prescriptions of dangerous drugs? What will happen to them? And on section 19, how about those people who are issuing or signing unlawful prescriptions of dangerous drugs? What would happen to them? And on section 37, what will happen to those people who are issuing a false or fraudulent drug test results? Yon. Maraming ganyan. Mag-i-issue ng drug test. Dalawa yon. Nasabihin nila hindi positive. Okay? So they are actually dadaya sila, Kaya nga fraudulent. Or it's the other way around. Hindi siya positive pero sinabi positive. So may conspiracy theory naman doon, Okay. What would happen to them? Let's go on with the interesting topic of certain attempts or conspiracy to sell, to manufacture, or to deliver yung mga dangerous drugs na ito. According to Section 26 of the same Comprehensive Dangerous Drugs Act of 2002, any attempt or conspiracy to commit the following unlawful acts shall be penalized by the same penalty prescribed for the commission of the same. Okay, halimbawa, you become an importer, Mag-i-import ka ng mga, let's say, chemicals or any paraphernalias or even yung tinatawag na controlled precursors, Controlled precursors. So, yung sale, yung trading nito, yung pag-administer nito, yung pagdi-dispense nito, delivery, distribution, and transport of this imported illegal materials, anong mangyayari? Okay, you will be penalized, of course. And then another thing, another element para ikaw ay makonvict o mapatawan, ang tinatawag na accusation, yung maintenance mo. Halimbawa, ikaw yung nagme-maintain ng isang drug den, a resort where any dangerous drug is used in any form. You can be charged, of Comprehensive Dangerous Drugs Act of 2002. And then the manufacture of any dangerous drugs and or controlled precursor, yung sinasabi natin kaning controlled precursor and essential chemicals, or the cultivation, o yung pagtatanim or culture of plants which are sources of dangerous drugs. Then you can be accused, of conspiracy. Now, conspiracy involves not one person but several people conspiring or an attempt to do this kind of illegal action or dealings. And how about those people who were public officers or employees? What would happen to them? Could they be guilty of the same offense of drug trafficking or drug production or trading or conspiracy? Sa Section 27, we can see now the following provision. Any public officers or employee is criminally liable. So, criminally liable, mabigat yun, for the following. For misappropriation. Pag sinabing misappropriation, nakuha mo yung isang bagay na hindi mo dapat kinuha sa hindi tamang paraan. Misapplication. Ginamit mo yung isang bagay sa pamamaraan na mali. Now, always remind you of this of these illegal drugs. Or your failure to account for the confiscated, seized, or surrendered dangerous drugs. Ibig sabihin, hindi mo dineclare na meron kang nakuha, meron kang hinuli, o kaya meron kang nagamit na droga, pwede kang kasuhan, ano? Kung ikaw ay public officer. Okay, plant sources of dangerous drugs, yung mga pinagmanufacturean yan, kung may mga planta niyan, hindi mo sabihin natin na sinabi, yung mga controlled precursors and the essential chemicals, yung mga instruments o paraphernalias or laboratory equipments, including the proceeds of properties obtained from the unlawful act committed. Kahit yung mga nakumpiskang mga bagay, doon halimbawa sa na-raid, na drug dens, siyempre kinukumpiska yan. Tapos itinago mo, hindi mo siya dineclare sa iyong report, then you can be liable doon sa tinatawag na Comprehensive Dangerous Drug Acts of 2002 offense. Let's go now to section 26. Okay, according to section 26, any elective local or national official found to have benefited from the proceeds of the trafficking of dangerous drugs or who had received any financial or material contributions or donations from the natural or juridical persons found guilty of trafficking dangerous drugs, ito ang penalty nila. Let's go back to that first. To have benefited, yung mga nakinabang mula sa mga drug trafficking activities. At yung mga tumanggap who had received any financial or material contributions, yung mga tumanggap ng donations from the natural persons. Ano ibig sabihin nun? Natural persons found guilty of trafficking dangerous drugs. Yung mga mismong tao or yung mga group, yung mga tinatawag na mga mobs who were found guilty of trafficking dangerous drugs. Ano mangyayari sa mga elected officials na ito who were found guilty? They shall be removed from the office, that is one, and will be perpetually, habang buhay, na disqualification from holding any elective or appointed position in the government. Lahat ng level ng government, its divisions, subdivisions, and intermediaries, including yung government-owned corporations, hindi sila magkakaroon o tatanggapin para magkaroon ng position doon. That is the penalty for being guilty doon sa mga elected officials according to these provisions of the Comprehensive Dangerous Drug Acts of 2002. Okay, another interesting topic from Section 29. How about those criminal liability for planting of evidence? So about those government and law enforcers or maybe other people who are guilty of planting evidences doon sa mga taong hindi naman guilty. So what would be the liability? What would be the penalty for them if found guilty? Okay, according to Section 29, any person who is found guilty of planting, pagtatanim, any dangerous drug and or controlled precursor. Yung controlled precursor, yun yung mga chemicals na pinagkukunan o pinoprocess to get the derivatives of these dangerous drugs. Example is the shabu, ano? An essential chemical, regardless of quantity and purity, shall suffer the penalty of death. So yun ang kanilang penalty, death. Continuing on with the criminal liability for planting of evidence from Section 9. Now, what is planting evidence anyway? Planting evidence, according to our slide here, it is the willful act by any person. So, pag sinabing willful act, hindi niya sinadya lamang, kundi deliberately, ito ay kanyang ginawa. Maliciously and surreptitiously. Pag sinabing malicious, talagang meron siyang kasamaan sa kanyang isip na nais gawin sa kanyang kapwa. Surreptitiously, slyly, or pangiisa, kumbaga sa Tagalog, surreptitiously inserting, placing, adding, or attaching directly or indirectly through any overt or covert act. Okay, pag sinabing overt, yung hayag pero masamang gawain, yung covert act, hindi hayag, itinago na masama pa rin gawain. Ano? Yun nga, yung pagtatanim ng droga dun sa isang tao. Whatever daw yung quantity of any dangerous drug or controlled precursor and essential chemicals in the person, sa bahay niya, or in the immediate vicinity of an innocent individual. Okay, remember that word, innocent individual. Sabihin, di nila alam. They were being victim here for the purpose of, implicating, para siya ay maisangkot, incriminating, para siya ay maisama, or imputing, para siya ay mapagbalingan nung sisi. The commission o yung paggawa, deliberate na paggawa of any violation of this act. Continuing on from section 91, let's now discuss the responsibility and liability of law enforcement agencies. The responsibility and liability of law enforcement agencies and other government officials and employees in testifying as prosecution witnesses in dangerous drug cases or drugs cases. So meron pong liability or responsibilidad yung mga law enforcement agency natin in handling yung kanila pong mga tauhan when testifying during prosecution as state witness in any dangerous drug cases. Who, after due notice, fail or refuses intentionally or negligently. Subalit nung dumating na yung tamang panahon, they were properly notified, pero they failed to appear during the prosecution time or refuses. Ayaw nilang pumunta talaga. Okay? To appear as a witness for the prosecution in any proceedings involving the violations of this act at walang violation. So what would happen? Continuing on with section 91, responsibility and liability of law enforcement agency. What would happen is that the immediate superior of the member of the law enforcement agency or any other government employee mentioned in the preceding paragraph, if despite due notice to them, binigyan sila naman ng due notice ng korte, and to the witness concerned at doon sa kanyang tauhan who happened to be the witness then, the former does not exert reasonable effort to present the latter to the court, then he is also liable. Ibig sabihin, yung superior, hindi siya nag-exert ng enough effort to present his tauhan or his person or people doon sa prosecution time, okay, or to present that person to the court, he is also liable. Sino ang liable? Both of them. Now, in any case, yung tinatawag na witness who happens to be a member of the law enforcement agency shall not be transferred or reassigned to any other government office located in another territorial jurisdiction during the pendency of the case in court. Habang hinihintay o nakabinbin sa korte yung case, hindi siya pwedeng i-transfer ng kanyang superior, that witness, who happens to be a law enforcement agency agent sa ibang lugar for some reason. But kaya ita-transfer for some reason, Now, continuing on with section 91, the responsibility and liability of law enforcement agency. So the same person who is supposed to be the witness or a witness in a prosecution, who happens to be a law enforcement agency agent under his immediate superior. Ang sabi dito, both of them were liable kung nagkaroon ng discrepancy sa pagpapadala doon sa tinatawag na witness because careless o parang reluctant yung immediate superior na ipadala siya doon sa prosecution time. Now, but if the immediate superior shall notify the court where the case is pending asking for the transfer of his person or his people doon sa ibang jurisdiction. Now, what will happen is that if the court approved the transfer or reassignment, kinakailangan gawin niya ito within 24 hours from its approval. Or else, he will be liable. Who is going to be liable? The immediate superior. Should the immediate superior fail to notify the court of such order to transfer or reassign, there will be a consequence of penalty. Ano ang magiging penalty ng immediate superior? He will be imprisoned for 2 months and 1 day to 6 years. Ang bigat niyan. And then he will be fined for at least 10,000 pesos to 50,000 pesos. And the worst is, he will be perpetually and absolutely disqualified from any public office. Okay, how about those people or personalities who are deliberately delaying or bungling, okay, in the prosecution of drug cases? Bungling, parang hindi lang dinidelay, kundi parang dinidisregard, hindi pinapansin, being put aside, dinidelay. Now, ang sabi sa provisions in Section 92 regarding this case, any government officer or employee tasked with the prosecution of drug-related cases under this Act, who, through patent laxity, nasa papamagitan ng patent laxity o yung pagpapawalang bahala o pagiging relax. Next, inexcusable neglect o pagiging pabaya, sobrang pabaya. Unreasonable delay o yung tinatawag na pagpapaliban na hindi naman dapat ipagpaliban pa, or deliberately causes the unsuccessful prosecution o yung pagsadya na hindi maging maayos, makatarungan ang ginaganap na prosecution, and or dismissal of the said drug cases o yung tinatawag na pag-dismiss na hindi naman dapat ma-dismiss o yung magpatuloy kahit hindi naman dapat magpatuloy na mga kaso. So any government officer na ganito yung kanyang ginagawa regarding any drug-related cases, meron siyang penalty. Pag napatunayan na siya ay guilty, what's the penalty anyway? The penalty is that an imprisonment of 12 years and 1 day to 20 years without prejudice to his or her prosecution under the pertinent provisions of the revised penal code. In conclusion, we have appreciated and explored the different provisions stipulated in the Comprehensive Dangerous Drug Act of 2002, otherwise known as the Republic Act 9165, in control, in the regulation and support for the education of our community on the danger of drug abuse. And we have also discussed with you the generalized understanding of the legal basis of the drug prevention in the country in accordance with the law. And secondly, we have sufficiently understand that the Comprehensive Dangerous Drug Act was supposed to protect our human rights and security as recognized citizens of the Philippines. Thank you and God bless you.